Tono Monogatari Kunio Yanagita. I present this book to those who reside in foreign lands. I heard all of these stories from Mr. Kiyosaki Sasaki, a resident of Tono. Starting around February of Meiji 42, he would visit me from time to time in the evenings and relate these tales, which I recorded. Though not a skilled storyteller, Mr. Sasaki is a man of sincerity. I, too, have written down everything exactly as I heard it, without adding or subtracting a single word. I believe there are hundreds more stories of this kind in Tono village. We eagerly anticipate hearing more. In the mountain villages of our country, even more remote and mysterious than Tono, countless legends of mountain gods and mountain people must exist. I implore you, tell these stories and make the people of the plains tremble. This book is but a Chen Sheng Wu Guangdati. The end of August last year, I visited Tono village. On the road from Hanamoki, which stretches for more than 10 ri, there are 3 towns. The rest is nothing but green mountains and fields. The scarcity of human habitation is even greater than on the Ishikari plains of Hokkaido. Perhaps because the road is new, few have come to settle here. Tono's castle town is a bustling place. I borrowed a horse from the innkeeper and wandered alone through the surrounding villages. The horse wore a thick blanket made of black seaweed. This was due to the abundance of horseflies. The Surugarishi Valley was fertile and well cultivated. The number of stone pagodas along the roadside is unparalleled in the country. Looking out from a high vantage point, the early rice was ripening, the late rice was in full bloom, and the waters had receded into the rivers. The hues of the rice paddies varied depending on the type of rice planted. 3, 4, or 5 adjacent fields of the same color likely belonged to the same family and shared the same Maisho, field name. The names of areas even smaller than Kawaza, small hamlet, are unknown to anyone but their owners. These names often appear in old deeds of sale and transfer. Crossing over to Tsukumushi Valley, Mount Heiakin appeared faintly hazy, its shape resembling a sedge hat or the katakana character he. The rice ripened later in this valley, and the entire landscape was a uniform green. Walking along a narrow path between the paddies, a bird whose name I didn't know scurried across with its chicks. The chicks were black with white feathers. At first, I thought it was a small chicken, but when it disappeared into the weeds of the ditch, I realized it was a wild bird. There was a festival on Mount Tenjin, with a lion dance. Here alone, a touch of vibrant color flickered, contrasting with the village's greenery. The so-called lion dance was actually a deer dance. The dancers wore masks with deer antlers, and 5 or 6 boys danced with them, swords drawn. The melody of the flute was high, the song low, and though close by, I could barely hear it. As the sun began to set and the wind blew, even the calls of people sounded lonely. Women laughed and children ran, but nothing could dispel my travel melancholy. During the Obon festival, families with new deceased relatives raised high red and white flags to beckon their souls, a local custom. From atop the mountain pass on horseback, I could see a dozen or more of these flags dotting the landscape to the east and west. Dusk slowly descended, enveloping the villagers who would never leave their homeland, the travelers who had briefly entered their midst, and the serene, spiritual mountain. There are 8 cannon halls in Tono village, each carved from a single tree. On this day, many came to offer prayers of gratitude, and I could see lights on the hill and hear the sound of handbells. In a thicket along a less traveled path, a straw doll from the Amike's festival lay on its back, looking like a weary traveler. These were the impressions I gathered from Tono village. I imagine that books of this kind are not in vogue in these modern times. Some may argue that, despite the ease of printing, it is impertinent to publish such a book and force one's narrow interests upon others. Yet I venture to respond. Having heard such stories and witnessed such places, who could resist sharing them? At least among my acquaintances, I know of no one so silent and reserved. Furthermore, while our predecessors of 900 years ago, the authors of the Konjaku Monogatari, recounted tales that were already of the past in their time, these are stories of the present. Although I dare not claim to surpass them in piety and sincerity, these stories have rarely reached the ears of others, and even fewer have been committed to paper. In this respect, the unassuming and innocent Grand Counselor is worth listening to. As for the modern Otogi Hyaku Monogatari and its ilk, their intent is already vulgar, and they cannot vouch for the truthfulness of their tales. I am ashamed to even be compared to them. In short, this book presents current realities. I believe this alone justifies its existence. However, Mr. Sasaki is only 24 or 25 years old, and I am but 10 years his senior. What will people say if they criticize us for being born into this busy modern age yet failing to distinguish between significant and trivial matters, misdirecting our energies like the owls of Mount Myjin, overly sharpening our ears and widening our eyes? Ultimately, there is no right or wrong. This responsibility is mine alone to bear. I care not if the little owl neither hoots nor sings in the nearby forest, nor if it mocks me. Kunio Yanagita. Topography 1, 5, 67, 111. The Beginning of Gods 2, 69, 74. Village Gods 98. Kakura-sama 72-74. Gonja-sama 110. Household Gods 16. Okunarai-sama 14, 15, 70. Oshira-sama 69. Zashikiwarashi 17, 18. Mountain Gods 89, 91, 93, 102, 107, 108. Shamanesses Miko 27, 54. Tengu 29, 62, 90. Yamaotoko, Mountain Men, 5, 6, 7, 9, 28, 30, 31, 92. Yamaona, Mountain Women, 3, 4, 34, 35, 75. Mysterious Happenings in the Mountains 32, 33, 61, 95. Senning-D, Hermit's Hall, 49. Traces of the Emishi 112. Mounds and Forests 66, 111, 113, 114. Ubagami, Old Woman God, 65, 71. Ruins of Castles 67, 68, 76. People of the Past 8, 10, 11, 12, 21, 26, 84. The State of Houses 80, 83. The Rise and Fall of Families 13, 18, 19, 24, 25, 38, 63. Myrogar 63, 64. Omens 20, 52, 78, 96. The Destination of Souls 22, 86-88, 95, 97, 99, 100. Illusions 23, 77, 79, 81, 82. Yuki Onna, Snow Woman, 103. Kappa 55-59. Standing Monkey 45, 46. Monkeys 47, 48. Wolves 36-42. Bears 43. Foxes 60, 94, 101. Various birds 51-53. Flowers 33, 50. Little New Year's Events 14, 102-105. Amike's Festival, Rain and Wind Festival, 109. Once Upon a Time 115-118. Songs 119. One Tono Village is a plain surrounded by mountains, located in the western half of what is now Kamihei County, Rikuchu Province. Shincho Village is divided into one town and 10 villages: Tono, Tsukibushi, Tsukumushi, Matsuzoki, Aozasa, Kamigo, Otomo, Ayari, Masuzawa, Miyamari, and Tasobi. In modern times, it is sometimes called Nishihei County, and in medieval times, it was also called Tono Manor. Tono Town, where the county office is currently located, is the market town of the area and was the castle town of the Nanbu family's 10,000 koku domain. The castle is also called Yokota Castle. To reach this area, one disembarks the train at Hanamoki Station, crosses the Kitakami River, and follows the Surugarishi River, a tributary, eastward for 13 ri to Tono Town. It is a surprisingly bustling place for being deep in the mountains. It is said that in ancient times, the area of Tono Village was entirely covered by a lake, and that after the water flowed out into the human world through the Surugarishi River, settlements naturally formed. Therefore, numerous valleys and streams flow into the Surugarishi River at this point, commonly referred to as having 7 valleys and 8 inlets. Nai refers to a stream or valley and is frequently found in place names in the Oshu region. The two in Tono village is likely derived from the Ainu word for lake, and Nai is also an Ainu word. 2 Tono town is located at the confluence of two rivers, one flowing north and the other south. It used to be called Shikishichijuri, 7 by 7 by 10 ri, as goods from 7 valleys, each 70 ri deep, were gathered for trade. On market days, it bustled with 1,000 horses and 1,000 people. The most prominent among the surrounding mountains is Mount Heiakin, located north in the depths of Tsukumushi. To the east stands Mount Rokushi. Mount Ishigami, located between Tsukumushi and Tasobi, is smaller than the other two. Long ago, a goddess came to this plateau with her 3 daughters. On the night they lodged at the current site of the Izugongan shrine in Reinai village, the mother goddess said, "I will give the best mountain to the daughter who has the best dream tonight." As they slept, a divine flower descended from the heavens and landed on the eldest daughter's chest. The youngest daughter awoke, secretly took the flower, and placed it on her own chest. Thus, she acquired the most beautiful mountain, Heiakin, while her older sisters received Rokushi and Ishigami. The 3 young goddesses each inhabit their respective mountains and rule them to this day. Therefore, the women of Tono, fearing their jealousy, do not venture onto these mountains. This ri refers to mountain paths, specifically the Bando Road, where 1 ri equals 5 or 6 chode. Tasobi is likely an Ainu word. The same village name exists in Tamayama village, Iwate County. Reinai, a large village in Kamigo village, is also Ainu. Rai means death, and Nai means valley. Perhaps it's named after the stillness of the water. 3 Mountain people live deep in the mountains. Kahei Sasaki of Wano, Tokunai village, is still alive today at over 70 years of age. When this old man was young and hunting in the deep mountains, he saw a beautiful woman on a distant rock, combing her long black hair. Her complexion was extremely pale. Being a fearless man, he immediately aimed his gun and fired. She fell at the shot. Rushing to the spot, he found a tall woman with black hair unbound, even longer than her height. Thinking to keep it as a memento, he cut off a small portion, tied it up, and put it in his pocket. As he started his journey home, he became overwhelmingly sleepy. He stopped in the shade to rest for a while. Between dreaming and waking, a tall man approached, reached into his pocket, took the tied-up black hair, and left. Immediately, he awoke. It must have been a Yamaro Toko, he said. Tokunai is a large village in Tsukibushi village. 4 The head of a household named Kichibe in Yamaguchi village entered Mount Nekadachi to cut bamboo grass. He bundled the grass and was about to pick it up when a gust of wind blew through the bamboo field. Looking up, he saw a young woman with a child on her back walking towards him from the woods. She was a remarkably beautiful woman with long, flowing black hair. The cord holding the child was a wisteria vine. Her clothes were ordinary striped fabric, but the hem was tattered and mended with various leaves. Her feet seemed not to touch the ground. She approached effortlessly, passed right in front of the man, and continued on her way. The man, terrified by this encounter, became ill and remained so for a long time. He recently passed away. Yamaguchi is a large village in Tsukibushi village. Kichibe is a hereditary common name, so this man was likely also called Kichibe. 5 Since ancient times, there has been a mountain path called Fufuki Pass, used to cross from Tono village to coastal areas like Tanahama and Kirikiri. Although there was a shorter route from Yamaguchi village towards Rokushi, in recent years, those crossing this pass invariably encountered Yamaro Toko and Yamarona in the mountains. Everyone became so afraid that traffic gradually dwindled. Eventually, another road was opened through Sakaiji Pass, with Wayama as a relay station, and now only this route is used. It's a detour of more than 2 ri. Yamaguchi is so named because it's the Guchi entrance to Mount Rokushi. 6 In Tono village, wealthy farmers are still called cha, rich men. The daughter of a cha in Nukanome, Aozasa village, suddenly disappeared and remained missing for many years. One day, a hunter from the same village, so-and-so, entered the mountains and encountered a woman. Frightened, he was about to shoot her when she said, "Don't you recognize me? It's me, so-and-so." Startled, he looked closely and realized it was the char's daughter. When he asked why she was there, she replied that she had been taken by something and was now its wife. She had given birth to many children, but her husband had devoured them all, leaving her alone. She was destined to spend her life there. She told him not to tell anyone and to return quickly for his own safety. He fled home without even asking where she lived. Nukanome is the village in front of Nukanomori, Bran Forest. Bran forests are the same as bran mounds found throughout the country. There are many bran forests and bran mounds in Tono village. 7 A daughter of a family in Kamigo village went into the mountains to gather chestnuts and never returned. Her family, assuming she was dead, held a funeral using her pillow as a symbolic substitute. 2 or 3 years passed. Then, someone from the village went hunting in the foothills of Mount Goi and unexpectedly encountered the girl in a large, sheltered rock cave. They were both astonished. He asked how she had come to be in such a mountain. She replied that she had been abducted by a frightening person and brought there. She wanted to escape but never had the chance. He asked what kind of person it was. She said that to her, he seemed like an ordinary human, only exceptionally tall and with slightly intimidating eyes. She had borne several children, but he said they weren't his because they didn't resemble him. He would take them away, perhaps to eat them or kill them, she didn't know. When the hunter pressed her, asking if he was truly human, she said that his clothes were ordinary, but his eyes were a little different. Once or twice every 5 days, 4 or 5 similar people would gather, talk about something, and then leave. Judging by the food they brought from outside, they must have gone into town. As they were talking, she said that he might return any minute, so the hunter, frightened, returned home. This is said to have happened about 20 years ago. Haito Ikai refers to the period between one market day in Tono town and the next. Since there are 6 market days a month, Haito Ikai is 5 days. 8 Women and children who are outside their homes at dusk are often spirited away, just like in other parts of the country. From a house in Samuto, Matsuzoki village, a young girl disappeared, leaving her sandals under a pear tree. Over 30 years later, she returned, extremely old and withered, while relatives and acquaintances were gathered at the house. When asked how she came back, she said she returned because she wanted to see everyone. Then, without further explanation, she disappeared again. It was a day with strong winds. To this day, when the wind blows fiercely in Tono village, people say, "Today is the day the old woman of Samuto might return." 9 An old man named Yanasuke Kikuchi worked as a packhorse driver in his younger days. He was a skilled flute player and often played while driving his horses through the night. One moonlit night, he and several companions were traveling over Sakaiji Pass towards the coast. He took out his flute and played as they passed over a place called Yachi. Yachi is a deep valley with a dense white birch forest and a marshy, reedy stream at the bottom. At that moment, someone called out from the bottom of the valley in a loud voice, "That's interesting." They all turned pale and ran away. Yachi is an Ainu word meaning wetland, a common place name in the inland areas. It's also pronounced Yatsu, Yato, or Ya. 10 This man went into the deep mountains to gather mushrooms. He built a hut and stayed there. Late at night, he heard a woman scream "Kia" in the distance, a sound that sent shivers down his spine. Returning to the village, he discovered that on the same night, at the same hour, his younger sister had been murdered by her son. 11 This woman lived alone with her son. The relationship between the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law had soured, and the daughter-in-law often returned to her parents' home and didn't come back. One day, the daughter-in-law was lying down at home when, around noon, her son suddenly declared, "I can't let grandma live. I'll kill her today." He took out a large grass-cutting sickle and began sharpening it with a menacing look. His demeanor was far from playful, and though his mother apologized profusely, he wouldn't listen. The daughter-in-law also got up and tearfully pleaded with him, but he showed no sign of relenting. Seeing that his mother was trying to escape, he locked all the doors and windows. When she said she needed to use the toilet, he brought a chamber pot and told her to use it inside. As evening approached, the mother gave up and huddled by the large hearth, weeping. The son approached with the sharpened sickle and swung at her left shoulder. The blade caught on the fire shelf above the hearth and didn't cut deeply. At that moment, the mother let out a scream like the one Yanasuke heard in the deep mountains. The second blow landed on her right shoulder, but she still didn't die. Just then, the villagers, alarmed by the commotion, rushed in, restrained the son, and called the police. This was back when policemen still carried clubs. As the son was being taken away, his mother, with blood streaming down her, said, "I die holding no grudge. Please forgive Magashiro." No one present remained unmoved by her words. Magashiro even tried to attack the policeman with the sickle on the way, but he was deemed insane, released, and returned home. He still lives in the village. Gaga is a dialect word for mother. 12 There's an old man named Otozo Nitta in Yamaguchi, Tsukibushi village. The villagers call him Otoji, Grandpa Oto. He is nearly 90 and close to death. He often said he wished to share his knowledge of old Tono stories with someone, but no one wanted to visit and listen to such eerie tales. This old man knew more than anyone about the history of local lords, the rise and fall of families, the songs sung in the region since ancient times, the legends of the deep mountains, and the stories of the people who lived there. Sadly, Otoji passed away at the beginning of the summer of Meiji 42.13. This old man lived alone in the mountains for decades. He came from a good family, but after squandering his fortune in his youth, he became disillusioned with the world. He built a hut on a mountain pass and made a living selling amazake, sweet sake, to travelers. The pack horse drivers treated him like a father figure. If he had a little extra money, he would go down to the town and drink. He wore a red wool hari, half-coat, and a red hood. When drunk, he would dance through the streets on his way home, and even the police didn't bother him. When he became too frail, he returned to his hometown and lived a humble life. His children all went to Hokkaido, leaving him alone. 14 Every village has an old family that enshrines a god called Okunarai-sama. Their house is called Dade. The image of this god is carved from mulberry wood, with a face painted on it. A square piece of cloth with a hole in the center is placed over the head to serve as clothing. On the 15th day of the new year, the people of the hamlet gather at this house to worship the god. There is also a god called Oshira-sama. This god's image is made in the same way and is also worshipped by the villagers on the 15th of January. During the ceremony, white powder is applied to the face of the image. The Dade house always has a one tatami mat room. Anyone who sleeps in this room experiences strange occurrences. Pillows are often turned over. Sometimes, people are picked up or even pushed out of the room. Peaceful sleep is impossible. Oshira-sama is a paired deity. This god is also found in Ainu culture, as mentioned in Izo Fuzoku Iban, collection of Izo customs. In Koriwano town, Yugo province, the In and Yo deities, enshrined as the deities of the market, are worshipped with white powder on the 15th of January. This is a similar custom. 15 Good fortune follows those who worship Okunarai-sama. The Abe family, a wealthy family in Kashiwazaki, Tsukibushi village, is known as the Tanbua no Uchi, House of the Rice Fields. One year, this family was short of hands for rice planting. Tomorrow's weather looks uncertain. I wonder if we'll have to leave a small patch unplanted, someone muttered. Suddenly, a short boy appeared from nowhere, offering to help. They put him to work, and when lunchtime came, they looked for him to offer him a meal, but he was nowhere to be found. He returned later and worked diligently all day, helping them finish the planting. They didn't know where he came from and invited him to stay for dinner, but he vanished again at sunset. When they returned to the house, they found many small muddy footprints on the veranda, leading into the house and stopping at the Okunarai-sama shrine. They had a suspicion and opened the shrine's doors to find the lower half of the god's image covered in mud from the rice paddy. 16 There are also many families who worship Konsasama. The image of this god is similar to that of Okoma-sama. Okoma-sama shrines are numerous in the villages. A phallus, made of stone or wood, is offered to the god. This practice is gradually disappearing. 17 In many old houses, a god called Zashikiwarashi resides. This god usually appears as a child of about 12 or 13 years old and is sometimes seen by people. In the house of Kan's Imabuchi in Ide, Tsukibushi village, the daughter, who was attending a girls' high school, came home for a break and was startled to encounter a Zashikiwarashi in the hallway. It was definitely a boy. In the Sasoki household in Yamaguchi village, the mother was sewing when she heard the rustling of paper in the next room. That room belonged to the head of the household, who was away in Tokyo, so she found it strange and opened the sliding door, but there was nothing there. She sat down, and after a while, She heard repeated sniffing sounds. She realized it must have been the Zashiki Warashi. It had long been rumored that a Zashiki Warashi lived in that house. It is said that families where this god resides enjoy wealth and prosperity. Zashiki Warashi means children of the parlor. This god is also mentioned in Ishigami Mondo, Ishigami Dialogue. Point 18. The Zashiki Warashi can also appear as a girl. In another old house in Yamaguchi village, the home of Magaziman Yamaguchi, it was said that two child goddesses resided. One year, a man from the same village, so-and-so, was returning from town when he met two unfamiliar, beautiful girls near Tamiba Bridge. They seemed lost in thought and were walking towards him. When he asked where they were from, they replied, "We're from Magaziman Yamaguchi's house." When he asked where they were going, they said, "To so-and-so's house in that village." This so-and-so lived in a somewhat distant village and was a prosperous farmer. The man thought, Magaziman's days must be numbered, and not long after, the entire household of Magaziman, over 20 people, died from mushroom poisoning in a single day. Only a 7-year-old girl survived, and she, too, died later in life, old and childless. 19. In Magaziman's household, one day, many unfamiliar mushrooms sprouted around a pear tree. The men were discussing whether to eat them when the last Magaziman warned against it. However, one of the servants said that any mushroom could be safely eaten if thoroughly stirred in a bucket of water with rice straw. Everyone followed his advice, and the entire household consumed the mushrooms. The 7-year-old girl was outside playing and forgot to come home for lunch, and so she survived. Amid the chaos following the sudden death of the master, relatives, both near and far, came and carried away the family's possessions, claiming debts or prior agreements. Although the family had been the wealthiest in the village, they were ruined overnight. 20. There were various omens before this tragedy. When the men were turning over stored fodder with 3-pronged forks, they unearthed a large snake. Although the master forbade them to kill it, they ignored him. After they killed it, countless snakes emerged from beneath the fodder, which the men, amused, killed as well. Having nowhere to discard the carcasses, they dug a hole outside the house, buried them, and created a snake mound. There were enough snakes to fill several baskets. 21. The aforementioned Magaziman was a rare scholar in the village, constantly ordering and poring over Japanese and Chinese books from Kyoto. He was considered somewhat eccentric. He wanted to learn the art of enriching himself through foxes, so he built an Inari shrine in his garden. He traveled to Kyoto to obtain the highest Shinto rank, and upon returning, he offered a fried tofu every day to the shrine, bowing and praying. Eventually, the foxes became tame and didn't flee when he approached. He would even reach out and stroke their heads. The caretaker of the village's Yakushi hall would often joke, "My Buddha receives no offerings, yet Magaziman's god seems to be more effective." 22. When Sasaki's great-grandmother died of old age, her body was placed in a coffin, and relatives gathered. That night, they all slept in the same room. Among them was a woman who had been divorced due to mental instability, the deceased's daughter. It was customary in the region to keep a fire burning during mourning periods. The grandmother and mother sat on either side of the large hearth. The mother had a charcoal brazier beside her and added charcoal from time to time. Suddenly, they heard footsteps from the back door. Looking up, they saw the deceased old woman. She always wore her kimono tucked up in a triangular shape at the front to prevent the hem from dragging, and they clearly saw that she was wearing it the same way, even recognizing the stripes of the fabric. Before they could react, she passed by the hearth where the two women were sitting. Her kimono brushed against the charcoal tongs, and because the tongs were round, they spun around. The mother, a courageous woman, turned to watch her go. The old woman seemed to be heading towards the room where the relatives were sleeping. Just then, the insane woman screamed, "Grandma's here." The others awoke, startled by the scream. This brings to mind Mytalinx the intruder. 23. During the wake held on the 27th day after the death of the same woman, acquaintances gathered and chanted Buddhist sutras until late at night. As they were about to leave, they saw an old woman sitting on a stone at the entrance, facing away from them. Her back was exactly like that of the deceased. Since many people witnessed this, no one doubted it. No one knew what attachment had kept her there. 24. It is said that old families in the villages are called Dade because their ancestors migrated from Kai province in the first year of the Dade era. The Dade era coincides with the time of General Tomua's expedition. Kai is the original home of the Nanbu family. Perhaps these two legends have become intertwined. Dade may be Hora. Hora refers to a family or clan in the Tohoku region. There are examples in the history of Hitachi province. The word Horami appears later. 25 When the ancestors of the Dade families first arrived in this region, it was the end of the year. They were worried that they wouldn't be able to erect both New Year's pine decorations before New Year's Day arrived, so even now, these families observe the custom of leaving one of the pine decorations lying on the ground, with the sacred rope tied around it. 26 The Abe family, known as the Tambua no Uchi of Kashiwazaki, is a particularly distinguished old family. The previous head of the household was a skilled sculptor, and many of the statues of gods and Buddhas in Tono village were his creations. 27 The river that flows from Mount Heiakin to the sea at Miyako in the northeast is called the Hei River. Its basin is Shimohei County. The previous head of the household, now known as Ike no Hota, edge of the pond, in Tono town, was returning from Miyako when, near the Fuchi area of Haradai on the Hei River, a young woman asked him to deliver a letter. She told him to go to a pond halfway up Mount Monomi behind Tono town and clap his hands, and the addressee would appear. He agreed but felt uneasy along the way. He encountered a wandering monk, Rokubiyu. The monk opened and read the letter, saying, "If you deliver this, great misfortune will befall you. You must rewrite it and deliver a different letter." He gave the man a different letter. The man took it to the pond and clapped his hands as instructed. A young woman appeared and received the letter. As a thank you, she gave him a very small stone mill. If he put a single grain of rice in it and turned it, gold would come out. Thanks to this treasure, the family became somewhat wealthy. However, his greedy wife put a handful of rice into the mill. It spun wildly and eventually slipped into the small puddle of water that the man offered to the mill every morning, vanishing from sight. The puddle later became a small pond that still exists beside the house. The family name Ike no Hota, edge of the pond, comes from this incident. There are similar stories in the West. Is this a coincidence? 28 The first person to create a mountain path on Mount Heiakin was a hunter from Tsukumushi village, so-and-so, sometime after the Nanbu family took control of Tono. Until then, no local had ever ventured onto the mountain. This hunter, having cleared about half the path, built a temporary hut halfway up the mountain. One day, as he was grilling and eating mochi, rice cakes, on the hearth, he noticed someone peering into the hut. It was a large monk. The monk entered the hut and watched with fascination as the mochi grilled. Finally, unable to resist, he reached out and took a piece to eat. The hunter, intimidated, offered him more, which the monk gladly accepted. When the mochi was gone, the monk left. Thinking the monk would return the next day, the hunter placed 2 or 3 white stones, resembling mochi, among the real mochi on the hearth. They glowed like embers when heated. As expected, the monk returned and ate the mochi as he had the day before. When the mochi was gone, he put the white stones into his mouth. He was greatly surprised, jumped out of the hut, and disappeared. Later, the monk was found dead at the bottom of a valley. There is a story of a great flood of the Kitakami River called Shiragamizu, white hair water, caused by the curse of a white-haired old woman who was tricked into eating hot stones disguised as mochi. It is very similar to this story. 29 Mount Keet is a steep peak standing in front of Mount Heiakin. The villagers at its foot also call it Meiyakushi, front Yakushi. It's said that Tengu live there, so those climbing Heiakin never attempt to climb this mountain. The grandfather of Mr. Sasaki was close friends with the head of the Hanato family in Yamaguchi, a notorious scoundrel. In his youth, he was known for his violent behavior, cutting grass with an axe, digging earth with a sickle, and so on. Once, on a dare, he climbed Meiyakushi alone. Upon returning, he told this story. At the summit, there was a large rock, and on that rock sat 3 large men with a pile of gold and silver before them. They glared menacingly at him when he approached. He told them he was lost on his way to Mount Heiakin, and they offered to escort him. They led him almost to the foot of the mountain and then told him to close his eyes. When he opened them a moment later, the strangers were gone. 30 A man from Oguni village went to Mount Heiakin to cut bamboo. In a thicket of dwarf bamboo, he saw a large man sleeping. He had taken off his 3-sha-kulong, approximate 3 feet, sandals woven from dwarf bamboo. He lay on his back, snoring loudly. Oguni is a large village in Oguni Village, Shimohei County. Dwarf bamboo is a low-growing bamboo found in deep mountains. 31 Many children in Tono Village, especially girls, are abducted by strange beings every year. 32 Mount Senbon has a marsh. This valley has a strong, fishy odor, and few who enter it ever return. Long ago, there was a hunter named Hayato, whose descendants still live in the area. He saw a white deer and chased it into this valley, staying there for 1,000 nights, hence the name of the mountain. The white deer, shot and wounded, fled to the next mountain, where it broke its leg. That mountain is now called Katahayama, one-winged mountain. It then fled to the mountain beyond, where it finally died. That place is called Shiseki. The enshrined deity Shiseki Gongen is this white deer. It sounds just like reading an ancient topography record. 33 If you stay overnight on Mount Shiromi, the surroundings sometimes become faintly light in the middle of the night. Those who stay in the mountains to gather mushrooms in autumn often experience this. They also hear the sound of large trees being felled and singing voices coming from across the valley. The size of this mountain is immeasurable. In May, when people go to cut kaya grass, they see a distant mountain covered in paulownia blossoms, looking like a swirling purple cloud. However, they can never reach it. Once, a mushroom gatherer found a golden gutter and a golden ladle deep in Mount Shiromi. He tried to take them home, but they were extremely heavy. He tried to chip off a piece with his sickle, but he couldn't. He marked a nearby tree by peeling its bark white, intending to return. The next day, he went back with others to search, but they couldn't find the tree or the golden objects. 34 Adjacent to Mount Shiromi is an area called Hanare Mori, remote forest. Within it is a place called Chayashiki, rich man's residence, a completely deserted area. A charcoal maker once stayed there. One night, he saw a woman peering into his hut through the hanging straw mat. She had long hair parted in the middle. It's not unusual to hear a woman scream in the middle of the night around there. 35 Mr. Sasaki's grandfather's younger brother went mushroom hunting in Shiromi and stayed overnight. He saw a woman run across the forest in front of him, across the valley. She seemed to be running in mid-air. He heard her call out wait twice. 36 Standing monkeys and standing wolves are terrifying. Oh, I knew, honorable dog, refers to a wolf. Mount Futatsuishiyama near Yamaguchi Village is a rocky mountain. One rainy day, children returning from school saw wolves crouching on the rocks, raising their heads one after another and howling. From the front, they looked about the size of newborn foals, but from behind, they seemed surprisingly small. Nothing is more terrifying than the howling of a wolf. 37 In the past, pack horse drivers often encountered wolves between Sakaiji Pass and Wayama Pass. For night travel, they usually formed groups of about 10, each person leading 5, 6, or even 7 horses on a single lead rope. So there were usually 40 or 50 horses in all. One time, 200 or 300 wolves attacked. Their footsteps echoed through the mountains. Terrified, the men and horses huddled together, building a fire for protection. But the wolves leaped over the flames, so they untied the horses and stretched the lead ropes around them. Perhaps the wolves thought it was a trap, because they stopped charging in. They surrounded the group from a distance and howled until dawn. 38 An old man in Otomo Village, still living, and known as So-and-so-ji, was returning from town when he heard wolves howling. Drunk, he imitated their howls. The wolves, howling in return, seemed to follow him. Frightened, he hurried home, bolted the gate, and hid inside. The wolves howled around his house all night. At daybreak, he found that they had dug under the foundation of the stable, entered, and killed all 7 of his horses. The family's fortunes declined after that. 39 When Mr. Sasaki was young, he and his grandfather were returning from the mountains when they saw a large deer lying dead on the bank of a stream near the village. Its side was torn open, and steam was still rising from it, indicating it had just been killed. His grandfather said, "A wolf must have eaten it. I'd like to have the hide, but the wolves are surely hiding nearby, watching, so we can't take it." 40 It is said that wolves can hide in grass only 3 inches tall. Their fur changes color with the seasons, matching the changing colors of the vegetation. 41 Kahei Sasaki of Wano went hunting in Yachi near Sakaiji Pass. It was a field extending from Mount Shisaki. In late autumn, the leaves had fallen, and the mountains were bare. He saw hundreds of wolves running towards him from the opposite peak. Too terrified to move, he climbed a tree. The wolves ran past beneath him, heading north. It is said that since then, wolves have become scarce in Tono village. 42 At the foot of Mount Rokushi are areas called Obaya and Itakogoya. They are vast fields of kaya grass where villagers from surrounding areas come to harvest. One autumn, men from Ide village went to cut kaya grass and found 3 wolf cubs in a rock cave. They killed 2 and took one home. From that day on, wolves constantly attacked the horses of the Ide villagers, but they didn't harm the people or horses of other villages. The Ide villagers decided to hunt the wolves. Among them was a man named Tetsu, known for his strength and sumo wrestling skills. When they went out to the field, the male wolf didn't approach, but a female wolf attacked Tetsu. He took off his happy coat, wrapped it around his arm, and suddenly thrust it into the wolf's mouth. The wolf bit down. He pushed his arm deeper, calling for help, but everyone was too afraid to approach. Tetsu's arm went all the way into the wolf's belly, and the wolf, in its agony, crushed the bones in his arm. The wolf died on the spot, but Tetsu was carried home and died soon after. Happy is a light, loose-fitting coat. 43 This story also appeared in the Tono Shinbun, Tono newspaper, 2 years ago. A man named Kumar from Kamigo village went hunting with a friend on Mount Rokushi on a snowy day. Deep in the valley, they found bear tracks and split up to follow them. Kumar headed towards the peak and saw a large bear looking at him from behind a rock. The bear was too close for him to shoot, so he dropped his gun and grappled with the bear, tumbling down the snowy slope into the valley. His friend tried to help but couldn't reach him. They fell into the stream, with the man underneath the bear, sinking into the water. The friend seized this opportunity to shoot and kill the animal. Kumar wasn't drowned and survived with only a few claw wounds. 44 There is a gold mine on a mountain connected to the Rokushi range, above a village called Hashino. A charcoal maker who supplied charcoal to the mine was also a skilled flute player. One day, he was lying on his back in his hut, playing the flute, when someone lifted the straw mat hanging at the entrance. Startled, he saw a standing monkey. Frightened, he sat up, and the monkey casually ran away. Hashino is a large village in Kurihashi village, Kamihei County. 45 Standing monkeys closely resemble humans and are said to lust after women, often abducting village women. Because they coat their fur with pine resin and then dust it with sand, their hides are like armor, impervious to bullets. 46 A man named so-and-so, now nearly 50, lives in Hayashizaki, Tokunai village. About 10 years ago, he went hunting for deer on Mount Rokushi and blew his deer call. A standing monkey appeared. He mistook it for a real deer. Parting the dwarf bamboo with its hand, it came down the ridge with its large mouth open. Terrified, the hunter stopped blowing his call, and the monkey veered off into the valley. Oki is a deer call. 47 In this region, it's common to frighten children by saying, "The standing monkeys of Rokushi are coming." There are many monkeys on this mountain. If you go to see Ogace Falls, you'll see many of them in the trees along the cliffs. When they see people, they flee, throwing fruit and nuts. 48 There are also many monkeys on Senning Pass, who playfully throw stones at travelers. 49 Senning Pass is 15 ri up and 15 ri down. Halfway up, there is a hall enshrining the image of a hermit, Senning. It has long been customary for travelers to write about strange encounters they've had in the mountains on the walls of this hall. For example, "I am from Ekigo province. On the night of such and such date, I met a young woman with long, flowing hair on this mountain path. She looked at me and smiled." They also write about being harassed by monkeys or encountering robbers. This RI also refers to mountain paths. 50 There are kako flowers on Mount Shisaki, a rare flower even in Tono village. In May, when the cuckoos sing, women and children go to the mountain to pick them. If you pickle them in vinegar, they turn purple. Children blow into them like ground cherries to make them whistle. Picking these flowers is a great pastime for young people. 51 Many birds live in the mountains, but the bird with the saddest call is the otodori. It sings in the middle of summer nights. Pack horse drivers returning from Tsuchi on the coast, hear its call echoing from the valleys as they cross the mountain pass. Long ago, there was a rich man's daughter who befriended a rich man's son. They went to play in the mountains, and the boy disappeared. The girl searched for him until nightfall but couldn't find him. She eventually turned into this bird. Its call, Otto-en, means husband. It's a mournful cry that fades at the end. 52 The umaidori, horse-chasing bird, resembles a cuckoo but is slightly larger. Its feathers are reddish-brown, and it has stripes on its shoulders that look like horse reins. It has something resembling a horse's muzzle around its chest. This bird was once a servant of a rich man. He went to the mountains to let the horses graze. When he was about to return, he noticed one horse was missing. He searched all night but couldn't find it and eventually turned into this bird. Its call, aho, mimics the calls used to drive horses in the fields. In some years, the umaidori comes down to the village and sings, which is an omen of famine. It usually lives deep in the mountains, and its call is often heard there. Kutsugoko is a net muzzle put on a horse. 53 The cuckoo and the little cuckoo, Hototojisu, were once sisters. The cuckoo, the older sister, dug up and roasted some potatoes. She ate the hard parts herself and gave the soft parts to her younger sister. The younger sister, thinking the parts her sister ate must be tastier, killed her with a kitchen knife. The older sister instantly turned into a bird and flew away, crying ganko, ganko. Ganko is a dialect word meaning hard. The younger sister realized she had been given the better parts and, overcome with regret, also turned into a bird, crying hch kaketa, knife cut. In Tono, the little cuckoo is called hch kaketa. Around Morioka, they say the little cuckoo sings docha hitondeta, flew to where? This imo, potato, refers to a sweet potato. 54 There are many deep pools in the Hay River, and many frightening legends are associated with them. Near the confluence with the Oguni River is a village called Kawai. A servant of the village Char dropped his axe into the water while cutting a tree on a mountain above a deep pool. Since it belonged to his master, he entered the pool to retrieve it. He heard a sound from beneath the water and followed it to a house hidden behind a rock. Inside, a beautiful girl was weaving. His axe was leaning against the loom. As he was about to ask for it back, he looked at the girl's face and realized it was his master's daughter, who had died a few years earlier. She returned the axe, asking him not to tell anyone about her being there. As a reward, she promised to improve his fortune so he wouldn't have to work as a servant anymore. Whether or not because of this, he started winning miraculously at a gambling game called Debiki and soon accumulated enough money to quit his job and become a middling farmer. However, he was forgetful and failed to heed the girl's warning. One day, as he was passing by the same pool on his way to town, he remembered the incident and told his companion about it. The story quickly spread throughout the region. From that time on, the man's fortune declined, and he returned to work for his former master. His master, for reasons unknown, poured boiling water into the pool, but to no effect. Kawai is a large village in Kawai Village, Shimohei County. Kawai clearly means river confluence. 55 kappa are numerous in the rivers, especially the Surugarishi River. In a riverside house in Matsuzoki Village, 2 generations of women conceived children by kappa. The children born were dismembered, placed in one show, approximate 1.8 liter, barrels, and buried. They were extremely grotesque in appearance. The woman's husband's family was from Nabari Village, also a riverside family. The head of that household told someone the whole story. One day, the family went to work in the fields and returned in the evening to find the woman sitting on the riverbank, smiling. This happened again the next day during their midday break, and continued for several days. Rumors spread that a man from the village, so-and-so, was visiting the woman every night. At first, he only came when her husband was away working as a packhorse driver, but later he came even when her husband was home. The suspicion that it was a kappa grew stronger. The family gathered to guard her, but it was no use. Even her mother-in-law slept beside her, but in the middle of the night, she heard the woman laughing and knew the kappa had come, but she was paralyzed with fear. No one knew what to do. The birth was extremely difficult, but someone suggested that giving birth in a horse trough filled with water would ease the process. They tried it, and it worked. The child had webbed hands. The woman's mother had also given birth to a kappa's child. Some say it's not a matter of 2 or 3 generations of karmic connection. This family was quite wealthy and belonged to the samurai class. The head of the household even served on the village council. 56 In the house of so-and-so in Kamigo village, a child resembling a kappa was born. There's no definite proof, but the child's body was completely red, and its mouth was large, a truly unpleasant child. Deeming it ominous, they decided to abandon it. They carried it to a crossroads and left it there, walking a short distance away. Then, having second thoughts, they decided it was too precious to abandon and thought they could make money by exhibiting it. When they returned, however, it was gone. Michigi means a crossroads. 57 It is not uncommon to see kappa footprints in the sand along the riverbank, especially the day after it rains. Like monkey footprints, the big toe is separated, similar to a human handprint. They are less than 3 inches long. The marks of the fingertips are not as clear as human fingerprints. 58 Near Obakofuchi on the Kogurace River is a house called Shinya no Uchi, new house. One day, they took a horse to the pool to cool it off. While the stable boy was away playing, a kappa appeared and tried to pull the horse into the water. Instead, the horse dragged the kappa to the front of the stable, where it was trapped under an overturned horse trough. The family, finding the overturned trough suspicious, lifted it slightly and saw the kappa's hand sticking out. The villagers gathered and debated whether to kill it or spare it. In the end, they let it go after making it promise never to harm the village's horses again. That kappa is said to have left the village and now lives in the pool below Aizawa Falls. This type of story is common throughout the country. Almost every region where kappa are said to exist has a similar tale. Why is that? 59 While kappa in other regions are said to have blue faces, the kappa of Tono have red faces. Mr. Sasaki's great-grandmother, when she was a child, was playing in the garden with her friends when a little boy with a bright red face appeared between 3 walnut trees. It was a kappa. Those walnut trees are still large today. The house is surrounded by walnut trees. 60 Kaheji of Wano was waiting for pheasants in a pheasant blind. Foxes kept appearing and chasing the pheasants away. Annoyed, he decided to shoot one. He aimed at a fox that was calmly looking at him. He pulled the trigger, but the gun didn't fire. Feeling uneasy, he examined the gun and found that it was filled with dirt all the way from the muzzle to the breech. 61 The same man encountered a white deer in the Rockshi Mountains. Since white deer are considered sacred, he thought he would be cursed if he harmed it. However, being a proud hunter, he didn't want to be ridiculed, so he shot at it. He felt the impact, but the deer didn't move. Again feeling uneasy, he took out a golden ball, which he carried as a charm for emergencies, wrapped mugwort around it, and shot at the deer. Still, the deer didn't move. Finding this very strange, he approached and discovered it was a white stone shaped like a deer. A man who had lived in the mountains for decades could not mistake a stone for a deer. It was clearly the work of a demon. For the first time, he considered giving up hunting. 62 The same man, one night in the mountains, didn't have time to build a hut, so he leaned against a large tree, drew a protective circle around himself and the tree with a straw rope, held his gun upright, and dozed off. Late at night, he heard a sound and saw a large figure in monk's robes, with bright red clothing flapping like wings, perched in the branches of the tree. He fired his gun, and the figure flew away. This experience was utterly terrifying. This strange encounter happened 3 times, and each time he vowed to give up his gun. He prayed to his local deity for help but always returned to hunting. He often told people that he couldn't give up his profession until he was old. 63 A man named so-and-so Miura in Oguni was the wealthiest man in the village. A few generations ago, when his family was still poor, his wife, a somewhat simple woman, went to gather butterbur along a small stream in front of their house. Finding few good butterbur plants, she wandered further up the valley. She came upon a splendid house with a black gate. Curious, she entered the gate and found a large garden filled with red and white flowers and many chickens. Behind the garden was a cowshed with many cows and a stable with many horses, but there were no people. She entered the house through the front door. In the next room, many red and black bowls and dishes were laid out. In the back room, a brazier held a boiling kettle, as if tea was about to be made. But there was still no one in sight. Suddenly fearing it might be the house of a Yamaro Toko, she ran home. No one believed her story, but another day, as she was washing something at the riverbank in front of her house, a red bowl floated down the stream. It was so beautiful that she picked it up. However, she thought she might be scolded for using it as a dish, so she placed it in a grain bin and used it to measure grain. From then on, the grain in the bin never ran out. The family, finding this strange, questioned her, and she finally told them about finding the bowl. The family's fortunes improved, and they eventually became the wealthy Miura family of today. In Tono, these mysterious houses in the mountains are called Myrogar, bewildering houses. Those who encounter a Myrogar are supposed to take something, any tool or animal, as it's offered to them. Such houses appear to grant gifts to people. Because the woman wasn't greedy and didn't steal anything, the bowl floated to her. This kadu, front, doesn't mean a gate. It refers to the riverbank in front of the house where each household drew water and washed things. Kasani refers to rice, barnyard millet, and other grains. Kitsu is a box for storing grain. There are kitsu of various sizes. 64 Kanazawa village is located at the foot of Mount Shiromi, deep in the mountains of Kamihei County, rarely visited by travelers. 60 or 70 years ago, a family in this village arranged a marriage for their daughter to a man from so-and-so's family in Yamazaki, Tokinai village. On his way to visit his bride's family, the groom got lost on the mountain path and encountered a Myrogar. The house, the abundance of cattle and horses, the red and white flowers in the garden, everything was just like in the previous story. He entered the house and found a room with bowls and dishes laid out. In the living room, a kettle was boiling on a brazier, as if tea was about to be prepared. He thought he heard someone in the toilet or somewhere nearby. He felt bewildered, then increasingly uneasy, and turned back, eventually reaching the village of Oguni. In Oguni, no one believed his story. However, in Yamazaki, they said it must have been a Myrogar and that he should have brought back some bowls and dishes and become rich. They went back into the mountains with the groom leading the way to find the house. They reached the place where he remembered the gate being, but there was nothing there, and they returned empty-handed. The groom never became wealthy. Kanazawa village is in Kamihei County. 65 Mount Heiakin is a mountain of granite. On the side facing Oguni, there's a rock formation called Abegaje, Abe's Castle. It's located halfway up a steep cliff, inaccessible to humans. It is said that the mother of Abe no Sadato still lives there. In the evenings, just before it rains, people can hear the sound of the cave door being bolted. People in Oguni and Tsukumushi say, "We hear the sound of Abegaje's lock. It will rain tomorrow." 66 There's also a cave called Abe Yashiki, Abe's residence, near the Tsukumushi trailhead on the same mountain. Mount Heiakin is strongly associated with Abe no Sadato. Near the Yamaguchi trailhead leading up from Oguni, there are 3 mounds said to be the graves of Minamoto no Yoshi's, Hashimon Taro, retainers who died in battle. 67 There are many other legends about Abe no Sadato. On the border between Tsukibushi village, formerly called Hashino, and Kurihashi village, a few ri up the mountain from Yamaguchi, there's a wide, flat plain. The area is called Sadato. There's a marsh said to be the place where Sadato watered his horse. It's also said to be the site of Sadato's encampment. It offers a beautiful view of the eastern coast. 68 There is an Abe family in Tsukibushi village who claim to be descendants of Sadato. They were once a prominent family. Even now, their residence is surrounded by a moat. They possess many swords and horse-related equipment. The head of the family is Yeoman Abe, one of the wealthier men in the village and a member of the village council. There are other Abe descendants, including some near Abe date in Morioka, close to the Kuriyagawa stockade. 4 or 5 ch, a unit of distance, approximately 109 meters, north of the Abe residence in Tsukibushi village, there are castle ruins on the banks of the Kogurace River. This is called the Hashimon Zora no Tate, Hashimon Marsh Castle, and is said to be the site of Hashimon Taro's encampment. Further along the road to Tono town is Mount Hashimon. On the peak of this mountain facing Hashimon Zora no Tate, there's another castle ruin said to be Sadato's encampment. The two castles are about 20 ch apart. It is said that a battle was fought here, and many arrowheads have been unearthed. Between the two castles is a hamlet called Nitakai. At the time of the battle, this area was a reedy marsh with unstable ground. Once, when Hashimoto Taro passed through, he saw a large quantity of porridge, perhaps provisions for either army, and said, "Is this cooked porridge, Nita-kayu?" This is how the village got its name. The stream flowing past Nitakai village is called Narakawa, Sounding River. Across the stream is Ashiaraga village, Foot-washing village. It's said the village got its name because Yoshi washed his feet in Narakawa. Nitakai comes from the Ainu word natato, meaning wetland, which matches the terrain. In Western Japan, it's also called Nita or Nuta, all meaning the same thing. There's also a place called Nitakai in Ogawa village, Shimohei County. 69. The present-day Tsukibushi village has 2 Dade families. The head of the Dade family in Yamaguchi is Manage Hora. His adoptive mother, Ohide, is over 80 and still healthy. She is the older sister of Mr. Sasaki's grandmother and is skilled in magic. Mr. Sasaki witnessed her killing snakes and making birds fall from trees with her spells. On the 15th day of the first lunar month of last year, this old woman told the following story. Once upon a time, there was a poor farmer who had a beautiful daughter but no wife. He also owned a horse. The daughter loved the horse so much that she would go to the stable and sleep with it every night, eventually becoming the horse's wife. One night, the father discovered this. The next day, without telling his daughter, he took the horse out and hanged it from a mulberry tree. That night, the daughter went to the stable and, finding the horse gone, asked her father about it. Upon learning the truth, she was heartbroken and rushed to the mulberry tree, clinging to the dead horse's head and weeping. The father, angered by this, chopped off the horse's head with an axe. Instantly, the daughter, still clinging to the head, ascended to heaven. Oshirasama is the deity that originated from this event. The image of this god is made from the branch of the mulberry tree where the horse was hanged. There were originally 3 images. The first, considered the elder sister goddess, is in the Yamaguchi Dade household. The second, the middle sister goddess, was in the house of Gonja Zaike in Yamazaki, related to Mr. Sasaki's aunt by marriage. That family is now extinct, and the whereabouts of the image are unknown. The third, the younger sister goddess, is currently in Tsukumushi village. 70. According to the same woman, Okunarai-sama is a deity that always accompanies Oshirasama. However, there are houses where only Okunarai-sama is enshrined, and the image of the god varies from house to house. The Okunarai-sama in the Yamaguchi Dade household is a wooden statue. In the house of Mrs. Hanishi in Yamaguchi, it is a hanging scroll. In the Tanbua no Uchi household, it is also a wooden statue. In the Ide Dade household, there is no Oshirasama, only Okunarai-sama. 71. The old woman who told these stories is a devout Buddhist, but her beliefs are somewhat unorthodox, resembling a cult. She teaches her faith to followers, but they maintain strict secrecy, never revealing their practices to anyone, not even their children. They have no connection to temples or monks and gather only among themselves. Their numbers are small. Mrs. Hanishi is one of them. On the holy days of Amida Buddha, they wait until everyone is asleep, then gather in a hidden room to pray. Because they are skilled in magic and spells, they hold a certain authority in the community. 72. Kotohota, in Tokinai village, is located in a deep mountain valley. There are only about 5 houses, situated upstream of a tributary of the Kogurace River. It is 2 ri away from the other houses in Tokinai. There's a mound at the entrance to Kotohota. On top of the mound is a wooden seated statue about the size of a human. It used to be inside a hall but is now exposed to the elements. This is called Kakurasama. The village children treat it like a toy, pulling it out and throwing it into the river or dragging it along the road. As a result, its nose and mouth are now worn away. It is said that anyone who scolds or tries to stop the children is cursed with illness. There are other examples of deities and Buddhist statues enjoying playing with children and becoming angry when someone tries to stop them. These include the Yakushi Buddha of TKG Temple in Ike Village, Ogasa County, TTMI Province, Kakegawasha Records of Kakegawa, the deity of Gunjim Shrine in Toyoda Village, Abe County, Suruga Province, Shin F. Doki New Topography Record, and the wooden Buddha of the Maida Hall in Ite, Chikuma County, Shinano Province, Shinano Kishiroku Record of Scenic Spots in Shinano. Point 73. There are many Kakurasama wooden statues in Tono village, including one in Nishinai, Tokinai village. Some people remember there used to be one in Hora, part of Yamaguchi as well. No one worships Kakurasama, they are crudely carved, and the details of their clothing and headwear are unclear. Point 74. The Kakurasama in Tokinai are the aforementioned large and small statues. There are 3 or 4 in Tsukibushi village. All Kakurasama are wooden busts, roughly carved with an axe. However, they are recognizable as human faces. Kakurasama originally referred to a place where deities rested during their travels, but it came to be the name of the deity residing in that place. Point 75. Until a few years ago, there was a matchstick factory in Chayashiki in Hanare Mori. Every night, a woman would appear at the entrance of the factory, look at the workers, and laugh. The workers found this so unsettling that the factory was eventually moved to Yamaguchi. Later, another hut was built in the same mountain area for cutting railroad ties. In the evenings, the workers would often get lost and return in a daze. This happened to 4 or 5 workers, and others continued to wander off. Those who returned said a woman came and led them away. After returning, they had no memory of 2 or 3 days. Point 76. Chayashiki is said to be the site of a former rich man's residence, and there is also a Nukana Mori, bran forest, nearby. It is said that this is where the rich man's household discarded its rice bran. There's a 5-leafed jutsia bush in the forest, under which gold is supposedly buried. Even now, people occasionally search for this jutsia bush. Perhaps this rich man was an old gold miner, as there are iron smelting slag in the area. The Ondoku gold mine is also nearby, in the same mountain range. Many similar legends about rich men are associated with bran mounds and charcoal mounds throughout the country, as are legends of buried gold. 77. Chaba Tajiri of Yamaguchi is the wealthiest man in Tsukibushi village. According to the old head of the household, when he was about 40 years old, after the funeral of Ohide's son, as people were leaving after the Buddhist chanting, he lingered behind to chat. As he was leaving, he saw a man lying on his back with his head resting on a stone under the eaves. It was a moonlit night, and in the moonlight, he saw that the man was a stranger, seemingly dead, with his knees bent and his mouth open. Being bold, he nudged the body with his foot, but the man didn't move. Since the body was blocking his path, he stepped over it and went home. The next morning, the body was gone, and no one else had seen it. He said he should have touched the body with his hand but, feeling somewhat afraid, he only nudged it with his foot and therefore couldn't be sure if it was real. 78. According to the same man, Seiichized of Yamaguchi, who served in his household, is still alive today, an old man of over 70. Once, when Seiichized was young, he came home late from a night out. The gate of his master's house faced the Tsuchi highway. In front of the gate, he saw a figure approaching from the direction of the coast, wearing a snow cape. As the figure drew near and stopped, Seiichized, finding it strange, looked closely. The figure suddenly moved towards the field across the highway. Seiichized thought there shouldn't be a fence there, but when he looked again, there was indeed a fence. Suddenly frightened, he rushed inside and told his master. Later, they learned that at the same time, a man named so-and-so from Nabari village had fallen off his horse and died on his way back from the coast. 79. Seiichize's father was also named Seiichized. They served the Tajiri family for generations, both husband and wife. When the younger Seiichized was young, he came home from a night out while it was still early evening. As he entered through the gate, he saw a figure standing in the front yard, hands tucked in its sleeves, its face indistinct. His wife was named Otsun. Thinking it might be a suitor for Otsun, he approached. The figure didn't run away but moved towards the entrance on the right. Annoyed, thinking the figure was mocking him, he continued to approach. The figure backed away, hands still tucked in its sleeves, and slipped inside through the slightly open entrance door. Seiichized, still not suspecting anything, reached inside through the gap to see who it was. The sliding door inside was closed. Now he became afraid. He stepped back and looked up to see the man plastered against the decorative transom wall above the entrance, looking down at him, its head hanging low, almost touching his own. Its eyes seemed to bulge out a foot. He was terrified, but it wasn't an omen of anything. Yubahito means someone who calls on someone. A suitor. The transom wall is the exterior wall above a lintel. 80. To fully understand the previous story, a diagram of the Tajiri house is necessary. Most houses in Tono village are built in a similar fashion. The gate of this house faces north, but usually, gates face east. In the diagram, the gate would be located where the stable is shown. The gate is called Jame, castle front. The residence is surrounded by fields, not walls. There's a small, dark room between the master bedroom and the inner part of the house. This is called the Zatbaya, blind man's room. In the past, when there was a banquet in the house, a blind musician, Zat, would be invited. This was the waiting room for the musician. One of the most striking features of houses in this region is their L shape. This house is a good example. 81 Mankichi Mikawa lived in Nozaki, Tokinai village. He died 2 or 3 years ago, in his 30s. A few years before his death, he came home late from a night out. It was a moonlit night in June. As he reached the corner of the veranda, walking along it from the gate, he glanced at the transom wall and saw a man lying against it. The man's face was pale. Mankichi was so startled that he became ill, but this wasn't an omen of anything. Marakichi Tajiri, a close friend, heard this story from him. 82 This is a story that Marakichi Tajiri experienced himself. When he was a boy, one night, he left the living room to go to the toilet. As he entered the dining area, he saw a figure standing between the dining area and the tatami room. The figure was faint and hazy, but he could clearly see the stripes of its clothing, its eyes and nose, and its long, flowing hair. Frightened, but wanting to confirm what he saw, he reached out. His hand hit the sliding door, and he felt the wooden frame. But his hand was invisible, superimposed on the figure like a shadow. When he moved his hand towards the figure's face, he saw the face on his hand. He returned to the living room and told the others. They went back with a lamp, but there was nothing there. He is a modern, intelligent man, not given to telling lies. 83 The layout of the Hora house, the home of manage Hora of the Yamaguchi Dade family, is somewhat different from other houses. A diagram is shown on the following page. The entrance faces southeast. It is a very old house. There is a chest of old documents in this house that they don't open, believing it would bring a curse. 84 Mr. Sasaki's grandfather passed away 3 or 4 years ago at the age of 70. His youth must have been around the Kai era, 1848 to 1854. Many Westerners lived along the coast in those days. There were Western-style houses in Kameishi and Yamada. A Westerner also lived at the tip of the Funakoshi Peninsula. Christianity was practiced secretly, and even in Tono village, someone was crucified for their faith. Old people still talk about how, according to those who had been to the coast, the foreigners often hugged and kissed. There were apparently many mixed-race children in the coastal areas. 85 In Kashiwazaki, Tsukibushi village, there are 2 albino siblings whose parents are both Japanese. Their hair, skin, and eyes are like those of Westerners. They are now about 26 or 27 years old and work as farmers. Their speech is different from that of the locals, their voice is thin and sharp. 86 The center of Tsukibushi village, where the village office and elementary school are located, is called Motojuku. There was a tofu maker named Masa, now 36 or 37 years old. When his father was seriously ill and close to death, there was a construction project in Shimoto Kainai, across the Kogurace River from their village. They were performing a groundbreaking ceremony. In the evening, Masa's father went there alone, greeted everyone, and joined them in the work. He returned with them when it got dark. People were surprised, as they knew he was seriously ill, but they later learned that he had died that day. They went to offer their condolences and told the family about what had happened. The time coincided with the moment of his death. 87 A similar story. In a wealthy family in Tono town, the head of the household was seriously ill and near death. One day, he unexpectedly visited his family temple. The priest welcomed him warmly and offered him tea. They chatted for a while, and then the man seemed ready to leave. Finding this strange, the priest sent an apprentice monk to follow him. The man left the temple, headed towards his home, turned the corner, and disappeared. Others also saw him on the street. He greeted everyone normally, but he died that night, even though he was in no condition to leave his bed. Later, at the temple, they checked where he had placed his teacup and found that the tea had been spilled all over the tatami mats. 88 Another similar story. Jeikanji Temple in Tsukibushi Village is a St. Zen temple, the head temple of the 12 temples in Tono Village. One evening, a villager named So-and-so met an old man named So-and-so on the road from Motojuku. Knowing the old man had been seriously ill, he asked him if he had recovered. The old man replied that he was feeling better for the past few days and was going to the temple to talk to the priest. At the temple, the priest welcomed the old man, served him tea, and they talked for a while. When the old man left, the priest sent an apprentice monk to see him off, but the old man disappeared outside the gate. The priest was surprised and, upon checking, found that the tea had been spilled on the tatami mats. The old man had died that day. 89 To get from Yamaguchi to Kashiwazaki, you pass along the foot of Mount Atago. The path changes from rice paddies and pine forests to a mixed forest where you can see the houses of Kashiwazaki. There's a small shrine at the summit of Mount Atago. The path to the shrine leads through the forest. There's a torii gate at the entrance and 20 or 30 old cedar trees. Next to them is a dilapidated hall. In front of the hall stands a stone monument inscribed with the words Yama no Kami, mountain god. This is a place where people have long encountered the mountain god. One evening, a young man from Wano, so-and-so, was on his way to Kashiwazaki on business and passed by the hall. He saw a tall figure descending from Mount Atago. Curious, he walked towards the figure, trying to see its face through the trees. They suddenly met at a bend in the path. The figure, seemingly startled, looked at him with a bright red face and shining eyes. The young man realized it was the mountain god and ran to Kashiwazaki without looking back. There are many Yama no Kami stone monuments in Tono Village. They mark places where people have encountered the mountain god or suffered its curse. They were erected to appease the deity. 90 There's a mountain called Tengu Mori, Tengu Forest, in Matsuzoki Village. A young man from the village, so-and-so, was working in a mulberry field at the foot of the mountain when he felt drowsy. He sat down on the edge of the field to take a nap. A large man with a bright red face appeared. The young man, light-hearted and fond of sumo wrestling, was offended by the large stranger towering over him. He stood up and asked, "Where did you come from?" The man didn't answer. The young man, proud of his strength, decided to push the stranger over. He jumped at him, but in that instant, he was thrown back and lost consciousness. When he came to in the evening, the large man was gone. Later that autumn, he went with a group of villagers to cut brushwood on the slopes of Mount Heiakin, leading their horses. When they were about to return, the young man was missing. They searched for him and found him dead in a deep valley, his limbs torn off. This happened 20 or 30 years ago, and there are still old people who remember it. It has long been believed that Tengu inhabit Tengu Mori. 91 There is a man in Tono town who knows the mountains well. He was originally a falconer for Baron Nanbu. The townspeople call him Tori Gozen, bird master. He knows the shape and location of every tree and rock on Mounts Heiakin and Rokshi. When he grew old, he went mushroom hunting with a companion. His companion was known as an expert swimmer who could make straw sandals underwater using straw and a mallet. They entered the mountains above Tsuzukishi, a place with unusual rock formations in Ayari village, beyond Mount Mukiyama across the Surugarishi River from Tono town. The two men separated. Tori Gozen climbed a bit further up the mountain. It was autumn, and the sun was about 4 or 5 ken, a unit of length, approximately 1.8 meters, above the western horizon. He saw a red-faced man and woman standing behind a large rock, talking. They saw Tori Gozen approaching and gestured for him to stop, spreading their arms as if to push him back. He ignored them and continued. The woman clung to the man's chest. Sensing that they weren't human, but wanting to play a joke, Tori Gozen drew his knife and pretended to attack them. The red-faced man seemed to raise his foot to kick him, and in that instant, Tori Gozen lost consciousness. His companion searched for him and found him lying unconscious at the bottom of a valley. He brought him home, and Tori Gozen recounted what had happened. He had never experienced anything like it before. He said he might die because of it and told everyone not to tell anyone else. He fell ill and died 3 days later. His family, puzzled by his strange death, consulted a mountain ascetic named Kenkin, who told them that Tori Gozen had disturbed the mountain gods at play and died as a result of their curse. Torigozen knew Mr. Aino, Tadataka Aino, a surveyor and cartographer. This happened over 10 years ago. 92 Last year, about 15 children from Tsukibushi village went to play on Mount Heiakin. As evening approached, they hurried down the mountain. Near the foot of the mountain, they met a tall man coming up the path at a brisk pace. He was dark-skinned, with shining eyes, and carried a small bundle wrapped in an old, light blue cloth, perhaps hemp. Although they were scared, one of the children asked him, "Where are you going?" He replied, "To Oguni." Since this path didn't lead to Oguni, they stopped, puzzled. In a blink of an eye, he was gone. The children cried, "Yamaro Toko," and ran home. 93 Kiku's Kikuchi from Wano's wife came from Hashino, beyond Fufuki Pass. While his wife was visiting her family, their 5 or 6-year-old son, Itoz, fell ill. Kikuchi left for Hashino after noon to fetch his wife. The mountain path was through a dense forest, as it was in the Rokushi range. The path down from the Tono side to the Kurihashi side was especially narrow, with steep slopes on both sides. As the sun began to set behind the slopes, making the path dim, he heard someone call his name from behind. He turned around and saw a figure peering down from the cliff above, its face red, its eyes shining, just like in the previous stories. The figure said, "Your son is dead." Hearing this, Kikuchi felt a shock of realization rather than fear. The figure was gone. He hurried home through the night with his wife and found that his son was indeed dead. This happened 4 or 5 years ago. Udo refers to a narrow path with high banks on both sides. Utaizaka or Utaizaka, singing slopes, along the Tikade Road are likely similar small cuttings. 94 This Kikuchi went to visit his older sister in Kashiwazaki and put the leftover mochi he was given into his pocket. As he was passing through the woods at the foot of Mount Atago, he met his friend Shikanoshuke, a heavy drinker from Tsubo, in a small grassy area within the woods. T smiled and challenged him to a sumo match. Kikuchi agreed, and they wrestled for a while. T seemed unusually weak, and Kikuchi easily threw him 3 times. T said, "I can't beat you today," and they parted ways. After walking a short distance, Kikuchi realized the mochi was gone. He went back to the grassy area and searched but couldn't find it. He suspected it was a fox but, ashamed, didn't tell anyone. A few days later, he met T at a sake shop and told him what had happened. T denied wrestling with him, saying he had been at the coast that day. It became clear that Kikuchi had wrestled with a fox. He kept it a secret from others until last New Year's holiday, when, during a drinking party, he finally confessed and was laughed at. Tsubo is a place name and also T's family name. The meaning of Tsubo is discussed in Ishigami Mondo. 95 A man named so-and-so Kikuchi from Matsuzoki, now 43 or 44 years old, is a skilled gardener. He often goes into the mountains to collect plants and interesting shaped rocks for his garden, carrying even heavy rocks home. One day, feeling unwell, he went to the mountains for a walk and found a beautiful rock he had never seen before. Being a rock enthusiast, he tried to lift it to take home, but it was incredibly heavy. It was shaped like a standing person and about the same height. Driven by his desire, he managed to lift it and carry it for about 10 ken, but it grew unbearably heavy. He leaned it against the side of the path to rest. As he did so, he felt himself rising into the air with the rock. It was like being above the clouds, in a bright, clear space, surrounded by various flowers, with the sound of many voices coming from somewhere. The rock continued to rise, and eventually, he lost consciousness. When he came to, he was still leaning against the strange rock. Fearing what might happen if he brought the rock home, he ran away. The rock is still there. He sometimes feels the urge to retrieve it. 96 There was a man in Tono town, 35 or 36 years old, nicknamed Yoshik Baka, Yoshik the Fool. He was mentally disabled and died 2 years ago. He had a habit of picking up pieces of wood and dust from the street, twisting them in his hands, staring at them, and smelling them. He would visit people's houses, rub his hands on the pillars, and smell them. He would pick up anything he saw and smell it with a smile. Sometimes, while walking down the street, he would suddenly stop, pick up a stone, throw it at a nearby house, and shout, "Fire! Fire!" Invariably, that night or the next day, the house he had targeted would catch fire. This happened repeatedly, and although people became cautious and took precautions, no house he targeted escaped a fire. 97 Matsunoji Kikuchi of Ide fell ill with typhoid fever and was near death. He found himself in a rice paddy, intending to hurry to Kisei-in, his family temple. He pushed off with his feet and suddenly leaped into the air, floating about a head's height above the ground and moving forward. With another push, he rose again. It was a strangely pleasant sensation. As he approached the temple gate, he saw a crowd. Wondering why they were there, he entered the gate and saw a field of crimson poppies stretching as far as the eye could see. He felt even better. Among the poppies stood his deceased father, who said, "You came too?" He replied and continued walking when he saw his deceased younger brother, who said, "Dad, you came too?" He said, "You were here," and tried to approach him, but his brother said, "You can't come yet." Then he heard people calling his name loudly near the gate. It was noisy and annoying, and reluctantly, he turned back. Then he regained consciousness. His relatives were gathered around him, splashing water on his face and calling his name. 98 It's common to see stones inscribed with the names of mountain gods, field gods, and border gods along the roadsides. Stones inscribed with the names of Mount Heikin and Mount Rokshi are also found in Tono village, but they are more common near the coast. 99 The family of Kiyoshi Kitagawa, the deputy mayor of Tsukibushi village, lives in Hishi. They were mountain ascetics for generations. His grandfather, Shfukuin, was a scholar who wrote many books and contributed greatly to the village. Kiyoshi's younger brother, Fukuji, married into a family in Tanahama on the coast. He lost his wife and child in the Great Tsunami a few years ago and lived in a small hut on the site of his former house with his 2 surviving children. One moonlit night in early summer, he went out to the toilet. It was far from the house, and the path led along the beach. It was a foggy night, and through the fog, he saw a man and a woman approaching. The woman was clearly his deceased wife. He followed them unconsciously along the beach towards Funakoshi village, to a small shrine at the tip of a cape. He called her name, and she turned around and smiled. The man with her was also from his village, someone who had died in the tsunami. He had heard that this man and his wife had been deeply in love before he married her. He asked her, "Don't you miss our children?" The woman's expression changed, and she started to cry. Realizing he shouldn't be talking to the dead, he felt sad and ashamed. As he looked down, the couple turned and quickly disappeared into the shadows of the mountain along the path to Yura. He tried to follow but realized they were ghosts and stood there thinking until dawn. 100 A fisherman from Funakoshi, so-and-so, was returning from Kirikiri late one night with his companions, passing through the Shigachizaka, 48 slopes, area. He saw a woman near a stream. It was his wife. But it made no sense for her to be there alone at that hour, so he concluded it must be a ghost. He suddenly thrust his fish-gutting knife through her, and she died with a cry. Feeling uneasy, he asked his companion to take care of the body while he rushed home. His wife was waiting for him. She said she had a terrible dream. Worried because he was late, she went to meet him in her dream and was threatened by someone on the mountain path, then woke up screaming. Realizing what had happened, he went back to the spot where he had killed the woman. His companion was still there, and as they watched, the woman turned into a fox. It seems that the spirits of the dead sometimes borrow the bodies of animals when they travel in dreams. 101 A traveler was passing through Toyamain village late at night. Feeling tired, he saw a light in the house of an acquaintance and decided to ask for a night's lodging. The master of the house said, "You came at a good time. An old woman has just died, and there's no one here but me. I was wondering what to do." The traveler couldn't refuse and stayed, smoking by the hearth. The deceased old woman was lying in the back room. Suddenly, she began to stir. Terrified, but calming himself, he looked around and saw something like a fox peering at the dead woman from the drain hole in the kitchen sink. He quietly slipped out of the house, went around to the back, and saw that it was indeed a fox, its head stuck in the drain hole, standing on its hind legs. He grabbed a stick and killed it. Toyamain is a large village in Toyamain village, Shimohei County. 102 The night of January 15th is called Koshigatsu, Little New Year. In the early evening, children form groups of 4 or 5, carrying bags and going from house to house, calling out, "The god of good fortune has arrived," and receiving mochi. After nightfall, no one goes outside. It's said that the mountain god comes out to play after midnight on this night. A woman named Omesa, now 35 or 36 years old, from Marukodachi in Yamaguchi, was 12 or 13 at the time. For some reason, she went out alone that evening, visiting houses, and it got late. As she was returning along a lonely road, she met a tall man coming from the opposite direction. His face was bright red, and his eyes shone. She dropped her bag and ran home, becoming seriously ill. 103 It is also said that Yuki-onna, snow women, come out to play on the night of Koshigatsu, or even on other winter nights with a full moon. They bring many children with them. In winter, village children often go sledding on nearby hills and sometimes stay out late. They are always warned to come home early on the night of the 15th because of the Yuki-onna, but few have actually seen them. 104 There are many rituals on the night of Koshigatsu. Tsuki-mi, moon viewing, is one of them. 6 walnut halves are heated in the hearth and then taken out and lined up. Starting from the right, each walnut is assigned a month, from January to December. If the walnut assigned to a full moon night remains red, the weather will be clear. If it turns black, the night will be cloudy. If the embers flicker, it will be windy. This happens every time, and every house gets the same result, which is strange. The next day, people discuss the results. For instance, if the August full moon walnut indicates wind, they know to hurry the rice harvest. Divination using grains and the moon is practiced in various forms throughout the country. It probably originated from Onmid, way of yin and yang. 105 Another ritual called Yonakura-mi, midnight viewing, is also performed on Koshigatsu. Mochi is made from various types of rice and shaped into a mirror. The same type of rice used for the mochi is spread evenly on a tray. The mirror mochi is placed upside down on the rice, and a pot is placed over it. The next morning, they examine the rice grains stuck to the mochi. The type of rice with the most grains stuck to it will have a good harvest that year. This is how they determine which variety of rice to plant for the early, mid, and late harvests. 106 Mirages are seen every year in Yamada on the coast. They always depict foreign landscapes. They show unfamiliar cityscapes with bustling traffic and crowds of people. The buildings are said to be the same every year. 107 There's a family called Kawabuchi no Uchi, Riverside House, in Kamigo village, located on the banks of the Hayas River. One day, the young daughter of the household was collecting stones on the riverbank when an unfamiliar man appeared and gave her some leaves. He was tall and had a vermilion face. The girl gained the ability to tell fortunes from that day. It is said the man was a mountain god, and the girl became a child of the mountain god. 108 There are fortune tellers in various places who are said to be possessed by the mountain god. There's one in Tsukumushi village. His main occupation is woodcutting. Magata of Kashiwazaki is another one. He used to suffer from seizures and lose his mind, but one day he went into the mountains and received the art of fortune-telling from the mountain god. Since then, his ability to read people's minds has been astonishing. His method is completely different from others. He doesn't consult any books. He chats with the person who comes to him for advice. Suddenly, he stands up and starts walking around the room, never looking at the person's face, and then tells them what's on their mind. He's always right. For example, he might say, "Remove the floorboards in your house and dig underneath. You'll find an old mirror or a broken sword. If you don't remove it, someone in your family will die or your house will burn down." When they dig, they always find the object. There are countless such examples. 109 During the Bon Festival, there's a ritual called Amikaze Matsuri, Rain and Wind Festival. Large straw dolls, taller than humans, are made and placed at crossroads. Faces are painted on paper and attached to the dolls, and gourds are added to represent male and female genitalia. The straw dolls used for the insect-repelling ritual are smaller and not decorated in the same way. For the Amikaze Matsuri, a household is chosen to lead the ritual. The villagers gather, drink sake, and then carry the doll to a crossroads, accompanied by flutes and drums. Some of the flutes are made of paulownia wood. They blow the flutes loudly and sing, "We celebrate the Amikaze Matsuri on the 210th day. Which direction shall we celebrate? We celebrate in the north direction." According to Togoku Yoshikatsuran, Overview of Eastern Japan. In Korea, altars dedicated to the spirit of the land are always built north of castles. Both practices likely stem from the worship of Genbu, black tortoise, the god of the north. 110 Gonja-sama refers to carved wooden masks, similar to, but slightly different from, lion masks, used for kagura, Shinto theatrical dances. Each kagura group has one. They are considered very powerful. The Gonja-sama of the Hashiman Shrine Kagura group in Nibari once had a fight with the Gonja-sama of the Itsukaichi Kagura group in Tsukibushi village. The Nibari Gonja-sama lost and is still missing one ear. Since the Kagura groups travel from village to village every year, everyone knows these masks. The Gonja-sama is especially effective in preventing fires. The Hashiman Kagura group once stayed overnight in a poor house in Tsukumushi village, unable to find other accommodations. They placed the Gonja-sama on an upturned 5-sho, approximate 9-liter, grain measure and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, they were awakened by a crunching sound. The eaves of the house were on fire, but the Gonja-sama on the grain measure was jumping up and down, devouring the flames and extinguishing the fire. When children have headaches, they often ask the Gonja-sama to bite their heads and cure them. 111 There are places called Danahana, in Yamaguchi, Ide, Orokawa in Tsukumushi, Higashizenji and Hiwatari, Nakazawa in Aozasa, and Tsukibushi village. In each case, there's a corresponding place called Rendano, nearby. In ancient times, people over 60 were banished to Rendano. Since they couldn't simply die there, they would go down to the village during the day to work in the fields for food. Even now, in Yamaguchi and Tsukibushi, going out to the fields in the morning is called hakudachi, grave departure, and returning in the evening is called hakuragari, grave return. Danahana means a mound on a hilltop, probably a burial mound where the guardian deity of the border is enshrined. Rendano is likely similar, as discussed in Ishigami Mondo. 112 Danahana is also said to be the place where prisoners were executed during the time of the castles. The terrain in Yamaguchi, Tsukibushi, and Ide is similar, located on a hilltop at the village border. There's also a Danahana in Sendai. The Danahana in Yamaguchi is on a hill leading to Hora, an extension of the castle ruins. Rendano is across from the village of Yamaguchi. Rendano is surrounded by valleys. To the east is the low-lying area between it and Danahana. The south side is called Hoshidani, Star Valley. There are many square depressions called Izo-yashiki, emishi residences. Here, their outlines clearly visible. Many stone tools are found there. There are 2 places in Yamaguchi where stone tools and pottery are found. The other place is called Hry. The pottery from Hry is more sophisticated, with intricate patterns, while the pottery from Rendano is crude and unadorned. Haniwa, clay figurines, have also been found in Hry, as well as stone axes and swords. Many clay objects shaped like coins, about 2 inches in diameter with simple spiral patterns, are found in Rendano. These are called izozani, emishi coins. Magatama, comma-shaped beads, and kudatama, tube-shaped beads, are also found in Hry. The stone tools from Hry are finely crafted and made of uniform material, while those from Rendano are made of various materials. Hry itself shows no other signs of habitation and is only about 1 hectare in size. The bottom of Hoshidani is now rice paddies. The Izo-yashiki were located along the sides of the valleys. There are 2 places around here where people believe digging brings a curse. The terrain and relationship between the 2 locations are similar in other villages. The place name Hoshidani, Star Valley, is found in other parts of the country, indicating places where stars were worshipped. Chawai-gongan is a deity worshipped throughout the U region, including Tono. It is said to be a snake deity. The origin of the name is unknown. 113 There's a place in Wano called Jukamori, Juka Forest. It's said to be the burial place of an elephant. This is the only place where earthquakes are not felt. People in the surrounding areas are told to flee to Jukamori during earthquakes. It's actually a burial mound. There's a moat around the mound, and a stone on top. It's said that digging there brings a curse. Juka is written in various ways, such as fixed mound, manor mound, or salt mound, and is found throughout the country. These are also places where border deities were enshrined. They are related to the story of Datsweba, the old hag who strips the clothes off the dead in hell, as discussed in Ishigami Mondo. There's also a connection to the ZT Shin, elephant-headed god, of Tsubo, so the elephant legend isn't entirely baseless. Referring to a mound as a mori, forest, is common in eastern Japan. 114 The Danahana in Yamaguchi is now a communal graveyard. Deutzia bushes are planted around the top of the hill, and there's an opening resembling a gate facing east. There's a large blue stone in the center. Someone once dug underneath it but found nothing. Later, someone else dug there and found a large jar. The village elders scolded them, and the stone was placed back. It's believed to be the grave of the lord of the castle. The nearby castle was called Bonshasa no Tate. Several mountains were cut through to divert water, creating 3 or 4 layers of moats. There are place names like Terayashiki, temple residence, and Toishi Mori, whetstone forest. The remains of a well and stone walls still exist. It is said that the ancestors of Magaziman Yamaguchi lived there. The details are recorded in the Tono Kojiki, records of Tono. 115 folktales are called Mukashi, long ago. There are many stories about Yamayuba, mountain hag, or Yamahaha. A couple of them are recorded below. 116 long ago, there lived a father and mother with a daughter. They went to town, warning their daughter not to open the door for anyone and locking it behind them. The daughter, scared, huddled by the hearth. In the middle of the day, someone knocked on the door, demanding to be let in. The voice threatened to break down the door, so the daughter had no choice but to open it. It was a Yamayuba. The Yamayuba stepped inside, sat down by the hearth, and ordered the girl to cook her a meal. The girl obeyed, and while the Yamayuba was eating, she escaped. The Yamayuba finished eating and chased after her. The Yamayuba was gaining on her, almost touching her back, when the girl met an old man cutting brushwood in the shadow of the mountain. "I'm being chased by a Yamayuba. Please hide me," she pleaded. The old man hid her in a pile of brushwood. The Yamayuba came and asked, "Where is she?" and tried to lift the brushwood, but the bundle was so heavy that she slipped and tumbled down the mountain. The girl escaped and met another old man cutting kaya grass. "I'm being chased by a Yamayuba. Please hide me," she pleaded. The old man hid her in a pile of kaya grass. The Yamayuba came and asked, "Where is she?" and tried to lift the kaya grass, but the bundle was so heavy that she slipped and tumbled down the mountain. The girl escaped again and reached the shore of a large marsh. With nowhere else to go, she climbed a tall tree. The Yamayuba, determined not to lose her, saw the girl's reflection in the water and jumped into the marsh. The girl climbed down and found a small hut made of bamboo grass. Inside, she found a young woman. She told her story, and the woman hid her in a stone chest. The Yamayuba came and asked, "Where is she?" The woman said she didn't know. The Yamayuba said, "She must be here. I smell a human." The woman said, "That's because I just roasted a sparrow." The Yamayuba said, "Oh, I see. Well then, I'll take a nap. Should I sleep in the stone chest or the wooden chest? The stone one is cold, so I'll sleep in the wooden chest." She got into the wooden chest and fell asleep. The woman locked the chest, took the girl out of the stone chest, and said, "I was also brought here by a Yamayuba. Let's kill her and go home." They heated an all red hot and thrust it into the wooden chest. The Yamayuba, unaware of what was happening, said, "Oh, a field mouse." Then they boiled water and poured it through the hole made by the awl, killing the Yamayuba. The two women returned to their homes. All Mukashi stories end with the phrase Kore de Dondo hair, and so it happily ends. 117 Long ago, there lived a father and mother who were preparing for their daughter's wedding. They went to town to buy things, telling their daughter not to open the door for anyone and to only answer, "Yes." A Yamayuba came and ate the daughter, putting on her skin and impersonating her. In the evening, the parents returned and called from the gate, "Oriko Himiko, darling Oriko, are you there?" The Yamayuba replied, "Yes, I'm here. You're back early." The parents showed her the things they had bought, and the Yamayuba pretended to be delighted. The next morning, the rooster crowed, "Look in the corner of the bran room, cock-a-doodle-doo." The parents thought it was strange. They put the bride, the Yamayuba, on a horse, ready to send her off to her wedding. The rooster crowed again. They put the Yamayuba on the horse, not Oriko Himiko, cock-a-doodle-doo. The rooster repeated this, and the parents realized what had happened. They pulled the Yamayuba off the horse and killed her. Then they looked in the corner of the bran room and found their daughter's bones. The bran room is a storage room. 118 The story of Benizara Kakezara, red plate, broken plate, is also told in Tono village. The broken plate is called nukabo, which means an empty grain measure. It's the story of a girl mistreated by her stepmother who, thanks to divine intervention, eventually marries a rich man. The story has many beautiful details, which I will record in detail when I have the opportunity. 119 There are old songs used for the lion dance in Tono village. They vary slightly from village to village and person to person, but this is the version I heard. It's a copy from over 100 years ago. The lion dance itself is not that old in this region. People are aware that it was introduced in the medieval period. Bridge praise. Coming here, look at this bridge. How sturdy it is, built with logs and bound with vines. Look at this horse path. It stretches 7 ri through the cedar forest to the great gate. Gate praise. Coming here, look at this gate. Built with cypress and Japanese cedar, this is an auspicious gate of white metal. Open the gate and look inside. See the honorable family. Coming here, look at this main hall. What a skilled carpenter built it. The builder was so skilled, a craftsman of old built this temple. Kojima Bushi, Kojima song. In Kojima, a gate built with cypress and Japanese cedar, this is an auspicious gate of white metal. Open the white metal gate and look inside. See the honorable family, a temple with 8 ridges and cypress bark shingles, topped with a Chinese black pine. A spring wells up to the left of the Chinese black pine, its water inexhaustible. A grand temple shining in the morning sun, with 100 cherry blossom-colored children. Waiting for the inkstone water that falls from the sky. Stable praise. Coming here, look at this kitchen. A rice cooking pot and 16 other pots. When cooking with 16 pots, they cut morning grass with 48 horses. Those horses, after their morning grass, graze on small kaya plants, making the stable glow with flowers. The dark horse in the glowing stable stamps its feet impatiently. I hear there's a skilled singer in this garden, singing with a shy heart. We have learned a new song today and will sing it tomorrow. Please forgive our mistakes. Our song is endless. Let us bow and begin, my friends. Masagata praise, square enclosure praise. Coming here, look at this square. A square garden enclosed on all sides. Coming here, look at this inn. It seems deserted. Town praise. Coming here, look at this town. 15 ri long and 7 ri wide, a friend lost in Jua province. The character for Jua is unclear. K Dendan praise.